Hi and welcome to this week's Fried AI with me, Billy McLaughlin, where I cut through the fuss and get to the facts on all the things AI and how it impacts our industry as accountants, bookkeepers and finance professionals. This week in the main headlines, we've seen Microsoft announce a canning of 9,000 jobs in favour of AI. Xbox is the department that is expected to take the biggest hit, and that's because 30% of their code is now written by artificial intelligence. Talking of hits, there has been a band go viral on Spotify with 500,000 monthly listeners in just 1 month, and interestingly, they don't exist. The band and their music is created by AI, and what's really interesting is that Spotify haven't disclosed this anywhere on their listing or page or whatever you call it over on that platform. Perplexity launched their Max plan at $200 a month, which is a similar price to ChatGPT Pro. And this gives you access to their lab and early access to features such as their Comet browser and other model releases before they actually go to the general market. And finally, Nvidia, just this morning, coming hot off the press, Nvidia's new valuation puts them above every single listed UK company, showing how much value really is in artificial intelligence. But since we last saw each other, we have had the AI Summit in London. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the first AI-centric event specifically for our sector. And honestly, what an event it was. I really am looking forward to next year already. Don't worry if you missed it, they are making a custom GPT like the digital accountancy show did. I showed you that a few weeks ago, where you can ask questions about the sessions and get responses, so it doesn't feel like you missed out too much. However, it was a sold out event, so make sure you get your tickets early next year. Sage did do a really great presentation on Copilot to show us what is to come, and one of the things I'm really liking about the way Sage are approaching this is they're injecting it into their current workflow, so it doesn't feel like there's a big overhaul. And because of that, it feels like we're going to get maximum gains, but minimal disruption. We got a sneak peek into their VAT agent, which looks super cool. So they already do have VAT insights. How this is going to work differently is it will be able to identify if there are any anomalies, anything that looks like it's incorrect, and then suggest those incorrect VAT codes and what it thinks it should be posted to. So again, like having somebody in the office doing those checks, you're going to have something that can do that across your entire practice and across all of your clients that are using Sage. They also showed us that AI is going to be embedded into their MTD for It's a Product. It was an event with Chris Downing, so of course MTD had to be mentioned. But what is exciting about the AI in this is that it will kind of alert you if there are any clients ready for MTD. So if you are using Copilot, you'll know there's a little insights button. If you just click on that, it will let you know how many clients are ready for MTD. And then the agent will go away and set up those tasks, set up those reminders, and even send out automatic documentation requests to your clients. They can then respond without it going into several different email inboxes across your practice. They can respond and it will all go into one nice place for you to access it. Jordan Vickery also did an incredible session all around meeting transcripts and the value that's hiding behind them. Honestly, it is incredible to think what we could do with these transcripts if we had the tools to do so, which of course Jordan did. So he did a live demo, which was very brave. I always say, do not work with children, animals and ChatGPT live, but he managed to absolutely nail it. He created a custom GPT, which he can give access to, and he had over a dozen prompts available as well. I'll tag him in the post, so if you are interested, I'm sure he'll be willing to send that over for you, so you can make sure that you're getting the most out of this information and it's not just sitting in a siloed system somewhere and not being used. On that note though, Vinyl did come out with some great announcements this week. They've got an integration with Carbon that is in beta testing. They've also got an integration with Xero, which means that within Xero Practice Manager, you're able to sync groups, clients and contacts. They've also launched their global search function, so you can search across all the transcripts that you've made within your practice. and the ability to download and delete transcripts in just one click. I was lucky enough to do 2 sessions that day, and the second one was around the top 10 tools that accountants and bookkeepers need to be using now. And how I did this was within 10 categories and then suggested some tools that people may not be aware of. One of those tools was around email organisation, because as accountants, it feels like we are just fighting fire. And one of the tools, SuperHuman, since last Thursday has been acquired by Grammarly, and this is because the news just moves so fast in this industry. So for those of you that don't use Grammarly, it's a fantastic tool, and I think the statistics are that they help rewrite up to 50 million emails every single week across its user base, which is pretty astronomical. So they've bought SuperHuman, who are an email management tool that claim to save people around 4 hours a week and assist them in replying between 1 and 2 days quicker to the person that they've received an email from. It's built for speed and productivity, so the two do seem like a really great strategic fit to me. Now, what is interesting is this is Grammarly saying that they want to build a multi-agent platform to help with things like emails, documentation, and calendars as well. So let's see where this one goes. This war of productivity that we're seeing is putting Grammarly now up against kind of Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, ChatGPT, especially with their new connectors, and Salesforce, I guess, with their Einstein model. So this is really putting Grammarly up there with some of the really big names due to this acquisition and some funding that they received recently. Something a bit more industry specific now. So last week I spoke about the inception of AI in some of the top firms, and this week is no different in terms of the news, with KPMG announcing the biggest cuts they've had to graduate intakes of around 30%. And they're not the only ones. We've also got Deloitte, EY, and PwC making cuts of 18%, 11%, and 6% retrospectively. So we're seeing a huge decline in the amount of graduates being taken by these big firms, because they believe that the work these juniors would be doing is essentially available now we have AI, and they believe that artificial intelligence can complete some of these tasks for a much cheaper price than graduates can. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there's 2 distinctive points that I want to make here, like one good and one bad. And we always like to start with the bad news. The bad news is, if we don't have any juniors now, what happens in 3 years' time when we want a practice full of seniors? It's all well and good not having the juniors now because we've got that band above, but in the future, who is progressing into those roles? We might have had a small technical issue, so I'm just going to recap on the end of this video because unfortunately we did have a small power cut, as you can see from the sign behind me. Next up is AI in audit, and the FRC, the Financial Reporting Council, have issued a 17-page document around the adoption of AI because they recognise that it is something that a lot more firms are embedding into their audit processes. The idea here is to document and also assist with that application of AI tools. So let me talk you through the what, when, why, who, and give you some action points to take away from this document. The why is actually really positive, and it's because the FRC have recognised that there is a huge potential to use AI when it comes to audits. However, they do also recognise that along with that do come some risks as well. I'm talking transparency, still abiding bioethical standards, and also documentation on what has been used. It is worth noting here that this is not prescriptive, it's not something that you have to adopt, but A, I think it's best practice, and B, it definitely indicates the direction of travel, in my opinion, of where these things are going to go over the next few years. So who is this aimed at? It is aimed mainly at audit teams and compliance teams that are going to be using artificial intelligence to assist them with their job. Also with compliance and quality teams, those whose documentation align with the ISQM UK 1 and the ISA UK 230, and the government 5 AI principles. So making sure that you do have those at the forefront of your mind when you're looking at this. How is it being used? Well, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but in the document there are some case studies that you can check out. But what I will point out is that when anomalies and fraud was detected, it then had human manual intervention to check through these entries to make sure that we've got that common sense oversight and that professional overview that I guess makes us so valuable. Okay, so coming on to the what. Now this bit is really exciting. So they have said what needs to be documented, and there are 2 aspects. There's the big, wide, firm aspect of documentation, and then there is what needs to be documented on the audit file. So there are 7 things that have been recommended for the firm, which I will go through now. These are the tool purpose and function. So what is the tool going to actually do? The criteria for appropriate use, so how are you going to use it? The development and rationale for that model selection, so what made you pick that specific AI tool? The training, data origin and legal compliance, have you looked into the legal compliance of that AI tool? The governance testing and assurance as well, very, very important in our space. The explainability and alignment with the 5 AI principles, which I just touched on a moment ago. And finally, the training and support of the team. So have you got some documentation that says you'll be continually training the team on the AI model that you've implemented in the firm? Now, the 4 that need to be considered for the actual audit file are tool description and the version that's being used. So let's go back to the days where we used to have Sage 50, but we used to have version 16, version 19, whatever it may be. We need to make sure we know exactly what tool and version we're using. The assessment of appropriateness for use. So how have we assessed this? How have we decided that that's the tool we want to use? They also want to evidence the central approval. This means that basically, how have you come to that decision? Who made that decision? And have you got evidence of that? For this, ironically, having an audit trail would be really, really beneficial. And then finally, the outputs. Have you recorded how the outputs have actually been used to come up with the audit conclusions? Now, do bear in mind, if you're just using these tools internally to help with something like research, a lot less documentation is needed. But I think this is a really great guidance and gives you that structure that I think sometimes we need just to help us out. So a few action points. First of all, speak with your internal audit teams, ask them what tools they're using, why they're using them, and then make sure you document it. Have that robust documentation structure within the practice. As I said, this is not prescriptive, but best practice wise, I think this is a great, great idea. And finally, do make sure that you're doing your due diligence on any products that you're using, making sure you're knowing exactly where the model is getting information from and seeing if it's actually going to be trained on your data. And if so, have you got sort of security in place to make sure that you've got that functionality switched off. My final message here is we're seeing more and more now that AI is not being seen as a theoretical tool anymore, it's actually here. And instead of trying to come up with ways that we don't need to be using it, actually these big institutions are finding ways to encourage that and encourage it in a very safe way. That is everything from me this week. I apologise for the change of scenery halfway through, but I hope you have a great weekend and I'll see you all next week.